of transportation, landfilling, and disposal of domestic waste. The landfill is natural monopoly. All other markets are competitive, and the domestic waste disposal marketplace is not competitive. Only one service provider. The competition to the tender was held for service provider on removal of domestic waste. Kyiv is a competitive marketplace. There are entities which provide services such as condominium management companies could they could select service providers so we can say the choice is in place. There are settlements in Kyiv region where there are several entities who take part in tenders, and consumers can select. They have choice, but more than half of them are monopolists, because settlements such as villages, they are small, so they have mostly one facility, one entity which provides services, and people are deprived of choice. At the end of last year, we presented to local self-governments the violations of anti-monopoly regulations which we found in those settlements in Kyiv regions where there are monopolies. More attention should be paid to this issue of monopoly. This is specific of the market where one monopolist is present at the marketplace, but when there are violations, when there is abuse such as high prices or some conditions which could not be set where competition is in place, this is a violation. So we try to monitor and control situation with the competition. Short question: who may and should apply to you? NGOs, activists, citizens? According to the law on public appeals, any persons can address us, but talking about the economic competition violation, either the entity whose rights are encroached, this entity should apply to us, or state bodies or law enforcement bodies should address us. The main violations are where self-governments do not hold tenders for removal of wastes, where administrative barriers are put, so maybe some potential providers of services, they just can't enter the marketplace. What our committee did, we provided recommendations to those self-governments and executive committees so that they hold tenders and select winners based on competitive procedure. We got to know that some self-governments, instead of tenders, they hold public procurement procedures instead of providing relevant rights to those entities. They just buy services for state budget funds. several times a year. They used budget allocations. We do not know what are the arguments why they use budget money for this. In one settlement, one and the same company won the tenders. I heard this public procurement tenders and we will present the results of our research soon on this service provider. And very interesting tender was held on December 4th, 2017 in Kyiv. State administration when Kyiv Pastrans won all lots in all districts of Kyiv. The marketplace was divided into lots, and Kyiv Territorial Department, by our own initiative, starts research into this tender. We will investigate potential creation of barriers to other market players. We have only 20 minutes left. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Ihnatenko, prominent experts in West management. What we can control as citizens, can you tell us? I am not a follower of the strategy adopted by the government. It consists some positive things such as extended responsibility of manufacturers, but there are also such questions that the state will continue to establish landfills. We should forget these practices, so I am against establishing new landfills, even consistent with the European regulations, because fires may happen anyway, and also emissions to the atmosphere and to water sources, water reservoirs. In Europe, in developed countries, formula of waste management is 50% are returned to recyclers via sorted collection of waste. 15% are recycled biomass and tanks, where this biogas is used to generate energy, and 35% is incineration, where residues of waste remain, they are incinerated. Sweden and countries which were mentioned today, they import waste and take money for this. In Ukraine, 94% of waste is landfills. In Europe, directive will be soon adopted that only 10% of waste is landfilled. In Switzerland, they do not landfill domestic waste at all. 0.5% is landfilled in Germany and Sweden. Ukraine should go towards a ban on landfills. In Ukraine, from January 1st, the ban on landfilling of unrecyclable domestic waste. Ukraine do not have technologies on recycling of domestic waste. The regulation the regulatory norm means that every director of landfill in Ukraine could be jailed for environment contamination. And Energy Regulatory Commission has issued 2 licenses to 1 incinerator and 1 other facility. The resolution of this commission issuing licenses, it seems like machination with the terminology. I'd like to say that we do not have infrastructure for incineration and recycling in Ukraine and for separate collection of waste. Sorting of waste figures are very small. According to my estimates, for this infrastructure, to introduce European approach, we need 5 to 7 billion US dollars, 1 billion for separate selection, 1 billion for recycling, and the rest for incineration, because it is more expensive sector. We talked that we should not apply global approach. We should not resolve on global scale this issue on national scale. Let us start with really extended responsibility of manufacturers and sorted collection of waste. Now it is more beneficial to landfill waste if increase of rates is mentioned, is adopted, then oligarchs will benefit from this. So for landfilling, the tax should be increased. It is 4.5 hryvnia per 1 ton. This is 1.5% in this breakdown of waste management bills. An individual every month pay 10 to 15 hryvnias for landfilling. We should increase this tax 50 times, and this would be the movement towards investment into this sector. Otherwise, investors will not come. Because even separate collection of waste is not profitable. It is loss making. If the law is adopted and it would set forth that this money would be the burden of consumers anyway. This is so in European directives, and in Ukraine, consumers, population will pay, because we are generators of waste. We are contaminating the environments with our waste. If we landfill everything, then we should do it the following way. The state should impose tax on environment for landfill. And the next item, if summing up everything which was said today, what measures should be introduced? Environmental tax, as I said. The second is decentralization of waste collection. The functions of energy regulatory commissions should be transferred. They should be delegated to sites, to towns and cities. Town and cities administrations should have the power, decision-making power, and create such conditions where landfilling would be not beneficial. The next is extended responsibility of manufacturers, as we have already said, and the fines should be increased. The system of control by fines, it should be in place. Of course, we should improve the system of control. Now we have civil watch now, and it is not easy. A citizen cannot become an inspector and control watchdog, a transporter. And the function should be provided to NGOs, and also economic control should be in place. For example, director of a kindergarten or school or condominium head should have the right to issue a protocol. Thank you very much. Self-organization is possible there where everyone understands this issue. That is why we hold such roundtable discussions. Now we have time for questions and answers. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Grushinsky, director of the largest landfill. This is you who could be in jail under this law. So use the chance to talk to me until I am not in jail. Landfilling is not beneficial. It would be better if transporters bring the waste to recyclers, to recycling facilities. Never landfilling and recycling will be a competitive market. We do not want competition between landfills. We do not want to have a large number of landfills around our cities. If Kyiv generates 200,000 tons of waste annually, we need very large facilities. Mr. Stanislav Pavliuk today said very good thing, which is really heard. The waste is a problem, it is not resource. We as consumers, as generators of waste, we should be responsible. We as individuals, as citizens, we should be responsible for waste fate. Our responsibility is only in payment for transportation and landfilling of waste. We do not pay for recycling. I want the census to be voiced out today, especially looking onto the banner slogan. Let's not be populistic. We can't resolve the issue via manufacturers' responsibility only. We should pay as consumers. Every year we have this discussion. It continues many years, year by year. Last year, the fifth landfill, which provides services to Kyiv, we have landfilled 400,000 tons of waste. The discussion is long. We can discuss how to pay via packaging tax or utility bills, but as an expert I would like to extend the service of waste management is very difficult to administer. Mr. Pavliuk said about one-story building development areas, what campaigns could be conducted in Troyeshina, Teremki districts, and non-payment for this service will not result in disconnection from electricity or water supply. If 10% of citizens do not pay, the transportation company still will remove waste. I saw in Germany the containers which had locks, and every inhabitant had his or her own key. Every household has keys. the rates, increased rates, if they are the motivators, I would not agree that the higher rates would motivate people. 10 to 15% would start to sort. The rest of citizens will continue to put unsorted waste until the citizens will start to pay in some way for the services. These services would not appear in Ukraine. Manufacturers' responsibility would not replace. As an author of the bill on waste management services, I would like to say the main thesis is not for the consumers to pay. This is normal to pay for what we consume, but in waste management area, the main principle is not to duplicate payments by the consumer. The consumer payment should not dub. The system which is proposed is tax on packaging. This is unique. It is not present anywhere, because according to the scheme, the consumer will pay 4 times. If you buy milk, packaged milk, it is already taxable, and nobody promote you to recycle this package, and you will pay for waste when you put it into a container, and for the 3rd time the incinerator will get green tariffs for energy. This would be the 3rd time when a consumer pays. It is impossible to pay 3 times for the same waste. The consumer should pay for what he or she consumes, and it should be one-time payment. I would be very brief. I would like to say that here we mix packaging waste and waste. Packaging waste comprises only 30% of waste, and separate collection of waste resolves this issue. The rest, 70%, this is the issue of recycling or incineration, and manufacturers of packaged products should not pay for this. I would like to turn your attention to the issue that all waste could be recycled. The question is in price. If plastic waste which would be collected separately, this would give incentives to people, those citizens who sort waste into at least 3 types, such as plastic, metal, and paper. The rates for them should be lower, very much lower. Thank you to all our speakers. We will have the opportunity to continue our discussion of records. Only my comment from what we know from our trips to the regions, from our work with journalists. People will be ready to pay more when they know where this money would be used. I suppose this is not the last discussion. Thank you for coming.